She had a nanny. She wasn't alone with her kids either.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't even know if I should start this comment thread. Does anybody know what the nanny did? What did the nanny do? Okay, so I've seen t-shirts before that say like, what does the nanny do? But we should make one that says, Meri should have been the nanny.
Yes.
Then she might have gotten some attention from Kody too.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 9 years and have two awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank our donors, our YouTube members, and our patrons over on Patreon. We really do appreciate your support.
Yes, and we also want to give a quick update for those of you who donated to our Christmas fundraiser. The way that YouTube takes the funds from the viewers and then processes them and then gets them to the proper entity takes time. It took a lot of time. And then with the Dream Center, because the one in Short Creek is just one of many Dream Centers, the money got sent to corporate, and then corporate sent it to the Short Creek Dream Center. And then we just heard from them that they have the money, they have the funds available, and we can start moving forward on changing a room. So just to give you an update, because I know it's been a long process. It's been long for us too. And we've been like trying to see, okay, did you get the money? Did you get the money? Is it all there? Because we want to make sure that your funds are going to what we promised it was. And it is, and the process will be starting shortly. And we will keep you all updated on that process as it moves along.
Yes, we're very excited, very excited. Thank you all once again for all of your donations, and we will keep you in the loop on how that goes.
Yes. Today we are back at it with fresh eyes on Sister Wives Season 16, and we are coming to a close of our gap of knowledge. When we started at Season 18 and we knew nothing, and all of you who said that were totally right. And thanks for being patient as we've worked our way through all of these seasons. And
it's interesting because when we started at Season 18, obviously going into it, we knew that we weren't going to know everything.
Yeah.
But we kind of wanted the fresh eyes idea of it and talk about things. But wow, we had no idea how much. Like this show, Sister Wives, had a lot that happened before Season 18. So it's crazy to look back now and realize how much we didn't know. Either way, it was fun to react to something that was kind of new to us, but it's good to have all of the knowledge about what was going on beforehand.
Yes, I think when we went into it, Season 18, we were really looking for those religious ties, right? Like looking for how they practice polygamy versus how Sam grew up in polygamy, which is what we try to do in all of the seasons. But, you know, at that point, things are falling apart. So it's really easy to be like, this is nothing like how Sam grew up. But then seeing the whole journey has been a lot. And I have to say, we watch a season every single week, which is a lot of episodes to go through. And typically by the time we're done watching one and we come and we film our video for the week, you know, we're like, okay, we're ready for a weekend break from Sister Wives. I'd say this is the first season where when this season ended, I like wanted to click on next. I was like, I have to know what happens in Season 17. And I thought to myself, I can't do that or else I'm going to confuse my seasons when we're talking about it.
So you know how people ask you, hey, did you watch such and such show? And you're like, no, I couldn't really get into it. Well, this is just one of those shows that you just have to watch the first 16 seasons and then you're hooked, right?
I'm officially hooked, I guess. But dang. Yeah. I mean, it's still going into COVID's still happening, as we all know who lived through it, right? I mean, sometimes I think I mentally like blocked out those years because at one point they're talking about September and I'm like, wasn't the vaccine out by then? And then I like am Googling it and I was like, oh no, it wasn't. And I'm thinking, why don't they do the test swabbing to get together? And then that does come in December and I'm like, oh my gosh, it did take that long. Like everything in COVID, you just mentally block out as trauma. And so you don't remember the timeline of how long everything took. And so watching this again was like painful because you're like, don't they have the vaccine? Don't they have this? Don't they have that? And they don't. And you're watching it in real time.
It was crazy to kind of have all of the memories come flooding back about COVID as we were watching them go through all the testing and everything, and everybody wondering, what does the nanny do? Just throwing that out there. That's to come later. Anyway, but yes, it's very crazy to have all of these flashbacks. And I just don't even know where to begin with Kody. The way he's handled everything. I would say as well in this season, I saw some glimpses of Robin that I very much wondered about. You turn a side eye at, like, oh, interesting that Robin is the one involved in these different things, and makes you wonder how much in control she is. Or she claims she's not in control. Kody claims she's not in control, but there are certain things that happen that you have to at least wonder.
Yeah, I'd say up to this point, it was funny because when we were reviewing season 18, a lot of people in our comment section were like, oh, it's all Robin's fault. It's all Robin's fault. And the seasons leading up to this, I don't want to say we've been defender of Robin, but because I think we've been pretty neutral. But just overall, I haven't been able to see this manipulative side, or that like Robin's running things a whole lot up to this point. Like, it's clear that she's the favorite wife. It's clear that Kody loves her in a different way. But I feel like this season's the first one where you can really see her influence and whether or not she's trying to. And I think that like both things can be true at the same time. I think she thinks she's not, that these are his rules. But if you are in a regular, healthy, happy marriage, don't you come up with all the rules together?
Right.
He doesn't have marriages really with any of the other wives, even at this point, maybe a little bit with Janelle, but he doesn't choose her opinion or her side of like looking at COVID, right? So he's going to make up these rules. And so while he may say, these are my rules, who is he bouncing those off of? He's not like in a room separate from Robin and then coming out and saying, here are the rules. I'm sure him and Robin in a normal, healthy marriage are coming up with what they think is best together. Yeah. And then he's saying, well, these are my rules. And
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That right there is the problem, is all of the other wives have their opinions as well. All the other wives are sharing how they feel like things should be done. He's only listening to Robin.
Exactly.
That is where that doesn't work for polygamy. You have to take into consideration all of the wives and all of their feelings and opinions if you're going to make it work. He is not doing that. In fact, he's claiming that he's not listening to any of them, but we have seen from the beginning he always listens to Robin.
Oh, yeah. Even in their meetings, like as wives and stuff, if he's starting to say something stupid, the other wives will just like roll their eyes, and Robin's like, Kody, that's not what you're meaning to say. This is what you're meaning to say. Or, she's always advocating, or I think at one point later she says like she speaks Kody, right? And so you can definitely see in this season, though, that while she's trying to say, it's not me in particular, like this is Kody as well, she's trying to put off all the blame onto him. He's trying to shoulder it, but it's very apparent that this is what they decided for Robin's family, for their family unit. And anyone who isn't wanting to be a part of Robin and Kody's family unit isn't welcome, basically.
Right. Yes, it's interesting, though, because Robin, in some cases where Kody was asking about getting the family together, Robin was the naysayer. And so it makes me wonder how much of the really strict beyond CDC, extra strict rules that they were doing, how much of that was Robin sharing her opinion, and then Kody going along with it. But because Cody's the one that makes the rules, apparently, it's all Cody's idea. But you have to wonder if Robin's opinions were what steered him in that direction, at least.
100%. I think the perfect example of this, which was so frustrating to watch, was how they handled it with Meri. Because, and this is a perfect example, and we know, we don't even see the half of it on this show, right? And it's even more apparent whenever they do the tell-alls, and you're seeing you're seeing how much time's going past, and most of their lives not being filmed. They're just choosing the important conversations, the important events. And so we know we're not seeing it all. But there was, even at the fire pit, when they're getting together as a family and they're trying to socially distance outside. And Kody's like, Meri's been in her house for weeks. Robin, why don't we have her at your fire pit? And Robin's like, I don't want that to look bad. Well, any logical person that's not in this weird tangle of emotional distress that their family's in would have been like, hey, she's quarantined for 2 weeks, so she can be touching my kids, she can be with us, we've all been quarantining the same amount of time, we can be together. Janelle and Christine, out of all people, would have been the people to understand that and be like,
Well,
well, that makes sense.
Both of them thought that thought that Meri was hanging out with Robin's
Oh,
family.
Christine said that in the tell-all. She's like, I assumed that
They
they
assumed.
were because they had the same rules. So why wouldn't they have been?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question. Like, why didn't they? And then when Meri finds out that the rules were what she was already following, and she's actually confronts Robin and they talk, and she's like, why didn't you let me see the kids sooner then? Like, it's been 9 months. Like, why didn't you? And Robin was like, oh yeah, Kody had said that as well. Robin was playing devil's advocate against herself, basically. Because at one point she's saying, Meri, of course I wanted you around the family. Of course I wanted you around the kids. And then on the other hand, she's saying that she basically told Kody no because she was worried about the optics.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't, and she's telling Kody no when they're all together as a family, even though they know they're being safe. Robin's stories just like weren't lining up. It didn't make sense at all. And then when you find out that they have a nanny, oh my gosh. Okay, we had heard nanny comments and I had not looked up the nanny stuff.
We haven't understood why it was such a big deal.
No, I thought, and this is going to make everybody laugh, so that's okay. You can all laugh at me. I can laugh at myself. Every time people had the like, what does the nanny do t-shirts, or I'd hear that comment, like, what does the nanny do? I thought they were referring to Robin's niece coming in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is that who they're referring to as the nanny? Which was still, even at that time, was weird because what's the point of having 3 sister wives if you have to have a nanny? Right? If the whole point of plural marriage is that you all take care of each other's kids, and Christine raised Janelle's kids, and Janelle loves Christine for it, and they all helped each other, and then Robin has to get a nanny. Like, I felt like that was telling all on its own.
Yep.
But then this was like next level.
It was crazy.
Next level. I get it, everyone.
And one of the big things too is they have all of these crazy strict rules that keep the family apart, and they're not friends, they're family, and they're keeping them all apart because of all of their rules. Okay, and then we find out there's a nanny coming in and out of their house. Okay, sure. Apparently they're abiding by the same rules. Apparently, there's no way we can know for sure what this nanny's husband's doing, or even the nanny's doing behind when she's not there, right? And we find out later that the nanny and her husband both get COVID, so obviously they're not following the rules perfectly. When they said that they got COVID, and so Robin was all afraid afraid that they had spread it around to the rest of the family, we paused and just we couldn't hold back the laughter. It was like the
irony was insane.
Irony. Oh my gosh.
Well, and if anybody else, like, it was right after a family gathering, right? If anybody else had found out that they had tested positive before the family gathering, before the quarantining, they would have been called a liar. You didn't do what you were supposed to do. It would have totally been blame the person who has COVID, right? Especially like if one of the boys, even after they'd quarantined, for some reason they got COVID, it would have been all about blaming the boys. And then this time it was like, oh, we just feel bad for the nanny because we know she was doing everything. They have no idea why. There's all this compassion for the nanny coming in and out of their house when she has COVID. So it was like, thank goodness it was a nanny and not one of the other kids. But then Robin was like, and this is why we can't get together as a family. This is why it's too dangerous because look, we could have exposed them. And I'm just like, none of the rest of the family thinks it's worth the risk.
Right.
Worth the risk after quarantining, after you do all the things that you can, then there's a certain amount of fate.
Be smart about it, for sure.
Yeah, be smart about it. But there's a certain point where it's like, I think Robin hugging Meri at one point, she's like, I forgot about the social distancing. And she goes, I just couldn't help myself but hugging her. We'll just put it in God's hands. Where's
God's hands in the rest of the family and the whole other time? You know, like
her saying that like got on my nerves. I was like,
it's like if you're going to rely on God to protect you, then be smart, be with your family and loved ones. Why is there this big divide and separation? And we understand that some of the family didn't abide by Kody's rules, the big checklist. That is understandable, but they were being careful still.
Yeah, I felt bad for Janelle the whole time. She said that over and over. She's like, you're acting like because I don't wipe down my mail with alcohol wipes and leave it outside for 24 hours, that because I don't do that one thing, therefore I'm not doing anything. And the entire season, I just felt so bad for Janelle because she's like, I'm doing all these things. I'm following the CDC guidelines. I'm doing everything. But then because I'm not doing whatever these extras are that Kody wants done, or it sounds like it all came from his doctor.
Yeah. Well, that's what he says.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
We'll see. But because it was like that, then he's acting like she doesn't do anything at all.
Right.
And one, that's super frustrating. Two, I feel like because Kody's already over plural marriage at this point, like he already said last season, like he's over it. He doesn't want to advocate for it. He's just done, right? I feel like those rules, he would die on the hill to keep those rules over adjusting things as COVID changed. And I don't mean COVID, the virus, but like as everything was changing, like CDC was changing guidelines constantly during COVID, right? The more we learned about the virus, the more we learned about how it was transmitted, you know, it was smart to continue to change and morph as things progressed through COVID.
Yep.
And then to not be willing to change or morph for anything as time's going on, I think was Kody just being so determined that now this is what you have to do to prove loyalty, as he always said, loyalty to me. And if you're not willing to do all of these lists to prove loyalty to me, whether they make sense to the CDC or not, if you're not willing to do that, then I don't have time for you.
Right. He's not willing, in my opinion, based on what I saw, and this is something that I guess in some other plural marriages and families you would see, but because of the way their family has always been, I felt like it was just so hard to watch. Kody's, he was not, I wouldn't say capable, but he wasn't willing to listen to other people. He had his set of rules, and that was final. He wasn't going to listen to anyone. He was just going to yell at people. He was going to be angry at people because they apparently didn't respect him or weren't loyal to him, because what he said was final. That was the end of it, period. And he wasn't willing to give anyone else the time of day.
Well, and I feel like that happened a lot with COVID, right? Like people got super divided and everything in life became very, very political, which was a shame. And typically, though, your family or your immediate circle were people who thought the same and were following the same precautions. I think even Christine might have mentioned this at one time, that with COVID, I feel like it kind of ended up becoming like a tribe thing. You found people who were on the same level of following certain guidelines, whatever those were, and you ended up having to stick with those people. And there couldn't be a lot of crossing because of how strongly people felt about wherever they stood, right? And it's unfortunate to see that in this case, where they all were so, well, can't even say they all were so different. Basically, you have it into what the episode call it, cliques. You have the two cliques, right? You have the people who are thinking and feeling and treating it the same way, and you have people that are thinking and feeling and treating it the same way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was within what was supposed to be one family.
Yeah.
And that's going to tear it apart into two pieces, which it did.
Yep. When we were watching this, a phrase came to me, and it was, and I don't know, this is going to be my new saying now, is that nobody has the right to always be right. You have to be willing to listen to other people's opinions, because if not, you're never going to learn. You're just going to be stuck in your way and think that everyone else around you is stupid unless you're willing to listen and learn from others around you as well. Kody was not willing to listen and learn from those around him. And whether he was right or not right, it doesn't even matter to me as much as it matters how he was treating his family.
Yeah, and speaking of the treatment of family, one other big thing was Isabelle's surgery. This was another super big frustration. So,
And we know this happened in the last season, but talk about it continued on in season 16.
No, the talk about it happened in last season, and he said, "Why don't you go alone?" And then this
I'm
season
sorry,
is
the
where
actual
the actual surgery happened
Correct.
this time, right?
Yes.
And I feel like this was just a matter of priorities, because even as Kody was saying, like, even according to Kody's rules, whether you want to call them Kody's rules, CDC guidelines, it was very clear in September of 2020 that quarantining for 2 weeks was the norm. And if you did that, then you would know that you were safe. If you had no symptoms after 2 weeks, then you would be safe to move forward. And that was their rule for everything else coming up into the holidays and before that, you know, and they were going to have to do that at Isabelle's surgery. You know, before she get the surgery, they had to go, be there for 2 weeks in quarantine, follow all those rules. And it really came down to he just wasn't willing to spend time away from Robin and her kids. And that's the only excuse for it, because as far as safety is concerned, they were going to quarantine in 2 weeks when they got there. They were going to be in a hospital that had very strict protocols. They were going to be wearing masks, doing all the things during travel. And when they got back, they would also be quarantining again before seeing other people. And that's what Isabelle did.
It was so sad.
It was 100% just not being willing to spend time with Isabelle over his other kids with Robin.
Yeah. His other kids that were just quarantining, staying in the home, and they were all healthy and they were all doing well. And the child that needed him and really needed him, it was just heartbreaking. It brought tears to my eyes to watch how many times she asked for her daddy when she woke up from her surgery. And she just over and over, and even though she tried to be brave to his face and say, oh, it's okay, I understand, the moment he wasn't around, she did not understand, and it was not okay. It just, I couldn't, it was hard, so hard for me to watch. Having a daughter of my own, I can't fathom not being there for your child when they need you. It was just so hard to watch.
Yeah, it was so sad. And again, at this point in September, the CDC had rules. Isabelle even said at one point, like, the hospital wouldn't have done it if there weren't rules to be able to make it safe for them to do it, right? And so he could have gone and followed somebody else's rules, but he didn't want to.
He was, like I say, he was stuck in his ways, and that was the only way it was going to happen. And honestly, I wonder now that I honestly wonder if Robin had chosen to do a different kind of rules, if that would have been the new rules, because it seemed to me that he was determined to make Robin's home and those children his home. It just seemed that no matter what, that was what he was going to do. And I understand Robin said multiple times, well, I'm just the one that's willing to be on his side and listen to him.
Well, it's easier when you're the one who's making the rules with him.
Well, it's easier. Yeah, exactly. And it's easier when you're the wife that your husband listens to.
Yeah.
So everything about polygamy is so unique and different. It's hard to even fathom putting yourself in that situation because it's such a unique lifestyle. But I grew up in a polygamous family, and I saw the family come together on big issues like illnesses or whatever the case may be. When I was a teenager and multiple of us brothers got into a really bad car accident, the family came together. There were almost every member of the family, except for the really young kids, were making the drive from Colorado City or Hilldale, Utah, down to Las Vegas to the hospital where we were all the time, day after day for over a month. Just the family came together. They were where they needed to be to help out, and it worked. And so to see this family, when something as serious as COVID-19 came into the world and came into their family, instead of them coming together and figuring it out and listening to each other, it just blew them up. Just goes to show that they were never a close-knit, work-together kind of family. I know the children wanted to be, but I don't think that Kody was ever willing to listen equally to all of his wives.
Yeah. At one point, I think Robin even said, like, oh, for Ari, it's really hard, when he's away for even 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, okay, so Robin didn't want to be alone with her kids for the 6 weeks it would have taken to go and take care of Isabelle.
And she had a nanny. She wasn't alone with her kids either.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't even know if I should start this comment thread. Does anybody know what the nanny did? What did the nanny do? If it's actually a nanny, because I told Sam, I was like, okay, Robin says she wants to sign up for polygamy and she wants to be a sister wife. COVID happens. 3 of her kids are either teenagers or full adults at this point, like 18 years old, right? Like don't need the everyday constant care. Robin has 2 children at home.
Younger ones.
And they are not infants or toddlers either. She has 2 younger kids at home. And I get that kids are a lot of work. I totally understand. And it can be draining. That's not what I'm saying. But at COVID, we all had our kids at home with us. And most of us were able to survive just fine without a nanny. Like,
maybe there's something that we don't know.
maybe there's something. That's why I'm wondering. So I'm opening that up in that sense of like, was it somebody to watch the kids while they were doing work stuff constantly and filming content? Like,
maybe
I don't
Robin's an astronaut and she was working in space, doing something very important. Maybe she was on a mission and needed some help.
and the 3 older kids weren't capable of babysitting or watching their younger siblings while they were sitting and quarantining in their house.
I don't know. I actually am curious if anyone has that information out there.
You gotta let us know, because I just was like shocked. And again, I know kids are hard, but then she has 3 older kids. You're telling me there's a teenager, a 17-year-old, a 19-year-old, Kody and Robin. So there's 5 people and 2 younger children. Again, not toddlers or infants. They're not waking up in the night feeding a baby every 2 hours or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's 5 big people to 2 little people. And they were like, you know what? I think we need a 6th. We need a 6th.
And I actually understand when it's a family and there's the very, very busy family and they're, the parents are always working. They both have very busy jobs, whatever, all these different things. I understand the need for help sometimes.
100%.
But they do have older children, first of all. Second of all, they're not leaving their house.
That's what I was going to say.
They're not out busy doing stuff.
Yeah,
They're
I'm not
stuck in their
knocking on
home.
having a nanny. If someone needs a nanny, absolutely have a nanny. But in the time of COVID, doesn't seem like the proper time to need a nanny when you have 5 big people to 2 little people.
Yeah.
The math ain't mathin'.
Yeah. So anyway, back to our neutral ground here. Someone go ahead and answer that question and we will move on.
Oh, man. Okay. Are we even ready to get into, what, let's talk about Janelle's boys first.
Oh, yes.
We'll talk about Janelle's boys before we get into Christine, because Christine will take us on and on through the end. Obviously, it was super hard to see Janelle's boys. They have jobs, they have girlfriends. They say they're following all the CDC guidelines. Kody apparently at one point felt like he was lied to, or one of them lied to him. So then that trust was broken, and I don't know. It was just sad. Like, Gabriel had a talk with his dad later, and he's like, if we had this talk at the beginning, I could have been more on board, or they could have possibly come to an understanding.
Yeah.
But it's this big telephone game, right? Like, Cody's like, well, I'm not going to come over. Or Janelle says, well, we have to do this, so you shouldn't come over. And then the kids are just hearing bits and pieces from the moms. And I don't know. It definitely seems like there was just a lot of miscommunication. And then on top of that, there's the fact that they didn't see eye to eye on how to handle COVID.
And Gabe mentioned that his girlfriend was also following all the rules and doing everything that she was supposed to do. And so he didn't understand why it was such a big deal.
And Kody was like, I didn't know your girlfriend was doing that. And he's like, well, it's not like
well, then you should have asked. You should have asked.
But I mean, they weren't letting Meri should have been the nanny. They weren't letting Meri come over when she was following all the rules either. And they weren't letting her be a part of the kids' lives. So if they're not willing to have...
Gosh. Why did you have to say that? Now I can't not think of that. Now I can't not think of that.
We should make... Okay, so I've seen T-shirts before that say, like, what does the nanny do? But we should get one that says... We should make one that says, Meri should have been the nanny.
Yes.
Yes. Then she might have gotten some attention from Kody too.
Well, I think that might be the problem. Why she wasn't a nanny is Kody didn't want her around.
Oh, maybe.
I think that was it.
Anyway.
It would have to be. Huh.
Sorry, I diverted us. Watching Kody and his boys struggle, and then we know that doesn't really get better, which is sad. It's especially hard to see footage of Garrison knowing that he is no longer here, and that's so heartbreaking that this kind of relationship with his dad was starting at this point. And so it's super sad to watch them go back and forth. But Meri, throughout this season, I know we're talking about whether, where she should have been invited, or if she should have been the nanny. But really, throughout this whole season, she's just proving that she wants to try to stay, and all of us are wondering why. And then she does say, why do I stay? Because I have a confirmation from God that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so at this point, it's still clear that Meri still has that belief and that faith in the idea of plural marriage, which not all of them do at this point.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. Well, we know Christine doesn't. Christine doesn't follow the religion at all. And based on the way that they all talk, I am under the impression that Janelle probably does still believe that plural marriage is a good thing, or at this point she did. But I don't think she believes in the religion the way she used to. I know Kody doesn't, even though sometimes he will use it as an excuse to get away with saying and doing certain things. But there's no way Kody follows his religion based on the way he's talking and acting at this point. But yeah, Meri, I don't know that she believes in the religion all the way, but she obviously believes in the ability of, feelings coming from God and confirmations and things like that. And so she finds that important to not break her covenants and to try to stick it out as long as possible.
Yes, which was very, I don't know, just sad to watch. It's hard to watch someone just be treated like that. And it's, as we start talking about Christine, Sam and I were kind of talking about the fact that it's interesting that just based on people's personalities can make all the difference in the same situation. Because, at the end of last season, Christine's like, I don't know if I can do a marriage with Kody, and says that to Meri. And she's like, you can't quit. You don't get to give up. You don't get to quit. You have to look at yourself. All the things that were really just reflective of what Meri feels in her relationship. And Christine's like, I don't want Meri's relationship. That relationship does not work for me. And if that's what it's going to be, then peace out. I'm done. Right. And so there are people who can be, I don't want to say happy because I don't even know if Meri's happy, but she feels like it's her responsibility to be happy in the situation that she's in because she feels a religious commitment. And therefore, that's the most important thing to her. And she'll make that work out. She even said at one point, like if this is how it is for the rest of forever, then this might be what I'm supposed to be doing in life type of mentality.
Yeah, Meri reminds me of a lot of FLDS women that are doing it because it's they feel that it is their duty. It's what God wants them to do. Obviously she's not the same. It's a very different belief and religion and all of that. But her sticking it out because she feels like that's what God would want her to do is the way I would feel about some of the FLDS women. Other FLDS women don't even like their husband, so that's a different story. Yeah. But I can at least feel for her and understand. Other people might say, well, Meri, come on. Like, obviously, God wouldn't want you to be here and be unhappy in all of this. And I can understand where she's coming from. Her perspective makes sense to the way that I used to believe because we were taught that this life was just a blip in the big scheme of things and that this was just a testing point, that you got to prove that you can do what God asks of you so that you can live for the eternities in happiness and joy and with God again. So I can understand that perspective.
And I think she mentions a couple times, and it might be in this season or in other seasons, like plural marriage isn't supposed to be easy. And that's something that clear from the foundation of it with Joseph Smith. It's something that is the underlying theme in Mormonism when it comes to plural marriage is that it's supposed to be hard. It's meant to be tough. It's meant to get rid of all your jealousies and make you a better woman, basically, and make you a better man, all of the struggles that go with it. Instead of looking at it from the outside perspective of if it makes everybody that unhappy, then like maybe it's not what God wants for you. But when you're in it, you're told that it's supposed to be that way. And so, I think Meri said that in this season as well. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. So if I'm struggling with it, then it means I'm probably doing it right.
Speaking of it being easy, when we were watching this season, it made me think back on people, and a lot of people have done this in a joking way, but some of them in a more serious way when talking about my experience and polygamy and all of that in the FLDS. And some guys have said something along the lines of, oh, well, where do I sign up? I want multiple women. And, it's all fun and games when you're joking about it, I guess. But in the big scheme of things, it's
not easy for the guys either.
It's not. And here's the thing. If you actually love your wives, I wouldn't want to put someone that I love in a situation where they're always going to be jealous, where they're always going to be getting a very small portion of my time and attention. I would never want that for someone that I love. And so, yeah, if you're planning on just doing it for fun or whatever, sure, but it's not. If you actually want to marry and be a polygamist. That just, I can't, it's funny because I come from there, but I can't imagine wanting that for myself.
Yeah, I think, we've mentioned before, but I feel like within the Brown family, the person who's the best plural wife is Janelle. And it's because she chooses it. And I think even though she doesn't talk about the religious aspect as much anymore, but she does talk about living the principle and like that she likes the lifestyle.
Yeah, she likes her
right?
independence.
She likes the lifestyle of it. And I think it's super cool that Janelle loves that her kids love Christine. Like, she's not jealous of that. She loves that, and so I think Janelle is definitely the best plural wife when it comes to that. But in the tell all, Kody, Kody was asked, oh, do you love, or are you in love with Janelle? And he said, I love Janelle. And she said, no, are you in love?
I like Suki. She was very good at digging deep with these questions.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And she's like, no, are you in love? And he just avoided the question basically and said, I think he
said, I don't think Janelle would think that we were in love either. So he basically said no.
Said no, but didn't want to come out and say no and say that it's more of like a lifestyle arrangement, right? As far as it goes between them. So it kind of goes with your theory of if you truly loved the women, it would be super hard for you to be torn in that way. And it's just very clear at this point that even Janelle, who is getting along with the best beside Robin, he doesn't even have that love for. He's like, I love you as a person, but not in love with them, trying to think of her best interests at heart and make things, the best for her. She's just a responsibility and a lifestyle.
Yeah, but it goes even beyond the wives and the husband and wives. There's children involved here too, and so seeing the relationship between Kody and Janelle's boys in this season was just heartbreaking. It's not just Janelle that's suffering, and yes, she can enjoy her independence, but it was clear here that too much independence is not okay either. She wasn't okay with too much independence either. She wanted him around. And when he wasn't there, it was very hard on her and very hard on her family and children.
Yeah, it was super, super sad. Kody at one point said, if you want an easy life, be a monogamist. I was like, we need to say that quote because I think all of us monogamists would agree that life isn't just easy because you have one spouse.
Right. Life is challenging for many other reasons than just polygamy, right?
And COVID was hard on monogamists.
Yes.
The same way it was hard on the Brown family. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, I think Kody is just so done with polygamy that he idealizes this idea of like, man, if I could just be a monogamist with Robin, all my problems would go away and I wouldn't have to deal with all these other things. And wouldn't that make life so wonderful?
Yeah, emotionally, it seems like Kody is a monogamist. Like he's emotionally, he's not living polygamy at all right now.
That's very true.
So, I mean, and even by his actions, I mean, it's almost like he has this, he's forced almost to be a part of these other families because they are his biological children. But emotionally, he just wants to go home to his one little family.
Oh, 100%. He even said in the tell all, like at the end, he said the women have the option to leave, and I don't get that luxury.
Yeah.
What a cringy thing to say.
He left emotionally already.
Suki called him out, didn't she?
Yes, I think so.
She was like, but you left them emotionally. And he's like,
did, yes.
That's not true. Like, what do you mean I abandoned them emotionally? I was there. It was because of catfishing, this and that. And we're like, we know that you were done with Meri long before the catfishing happened. Catfishing wouldn't have happened, most likely, if they had been in a healthy marriage before that and he hadn't emotionally abandoned her.
The catfish person from the beginning tried to get into Meri's life because she knew that she was in this vulnerable state, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And Meri only played with it because she was so lonely. And I'm not saying Meri's in the right here either. There should have been plenty of red flags that would have steered Meri away from the situation.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. But either way, Kody's not innocent here either when it comes to the catfish situation.
No. So he was talking about those wives, and then obviously the big elephant in the room this whole season was whether or not Christine was going to leave. She does, right? I mean, at the end of the season, it just kind of, she's packing up all of Kody's things, and he's like, "Okay, I guess this is the end, but we need to have a talk." And they kind of leave it on that cliffhanger per se, but in the tell-all afterwards, they say that she considers herself divorced. She did leave, so I'm guessing we're going to see that footage in season 17.
Yeah, they said that she is like she left physically as well. I wonder, is she already in Utah? Did they say?
I don't think they said where she is, but this whole season, so Christine at the very beginning of the season was trying to ask everybody if they'd be willing to move to Utah. Kody acted like he was on her side, then he didn't. Then he acted like he was on her side behind her back, but not to her face. It was a whole mess. But obviously, all of this stuff with Christine is going on in the background through this whole season. And then finally, you know, she has, I don't even know if you can call it a talk, but they kind of have like a little correspondence back and forth where he says, you know, I'm never going to want to be intimate with you again.
He claims he didn't say that, but Christine's side of the story is that he did say that.
Well, that he implied, he's like, well, I didn't say anything. She said, so we're never going to be intimate again. And I just was like.
Is that what he did? Something like that.
Something like that, right? Like, okay, obviously he was basically saying that he didn't want to be intimate anymore. And she is the exact opposite of Meri in a lot of ways, but in this way as well. She's like, okay, that's the final straw. Like, I can't do, you know, a loveless marriage. Or Kody tried to say, well, lots of people, you know, are in a marriage and have a loveless marriage, and that's okay. I know lots of people that are like that. And she's like, well, I don't want to be. So she packs up his stuff, puts it very passive aggressively into the garage, just one box at a time, which I was like, again, the point at which everybody's communication is so almost childish at this point. Yeah. Not that I can blame Christine, because I understand, like, to get to that point, there has to be so much pain, so much hurt, so much lack of communication for them to not have a conversation before her doing that it's hard to put yourself into somebody else's shoes of what your comfort level is. From an outsider's perspective, all of them, so many times throughout the season, it just seems childish.
They're just not communicating at all.
They're not communicating at all. Like, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to put your stuff out in the garage, he just finds it and is taking video of it. Mm-hmm. Instead of Robin calling Meri and saying, hey, next time you quarantine for 2 weeks, you want to come see the kids. Instead, she wants to blame Kody and pretend like he somehow made it so that Meri couldn't come see the kids for 9 months, even though they were doing the same thing. All of that's so childish. That's all stuff that could be handled literally over a text. We're not even talking real conversations. You could text someone and say, I'm putting your stuff in the garage.
Yeah.
Hey, next time you quarantine, come on over. Like, these are one sentence texts.
But like you said, all of the baggage leading up to that, Christine probably just wanted to be, if you want to call it, childish about it. She's like, you know what? I am so sick of this. I'm just going to do this without saying anything. You can figure it out when you get here, because I frankly don't care about you anymore.
Yeah.
And so maybe it was her trying to prove a point almost.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that communication is missing in a big way here, but I think that it has been so many years at this point that the communication is just getting worse and worse at this point.
Yeah, I am just proud of her for leaving, because one of the things that she had kind of talked about, that along with that they weren't going to be intimate anymore, was he didn't like her behavior. And as soon as I heard that, I paused and I turned to Sam and I was like, so he was using intimacy as a weapon against her, of you can have this, especially because he knew that she's wanted more of an intimate relationship for years, right? And so he's withholding or giving based on her compliance to whatever he wants or demands. And that is so mentally and emotionally abusive that I'm just so glad she left. Anytime I ever hear anything like that, I'm like, that is just so not okay.
I hesitate to say what I want to say right now. Oh boy. I know other men that have done that. Let's just say that. Very evil man.
Go ahead. You can say it. I know what you're going to say.
Okay, fine. From the beginning of this show, Kody has been furious that anyone would dare compare their polygamy to that of the FLDS because of the negative light, the evilness that was going on because of Warren Jeffs within the FLDS church. Warren Jeffs was that man that would withhold intimacy to punish his wives. That was one of his tools that he used frequently, and other things that he would do that we see Kody doing these kinds of things, and it's very frustrating, but at the same time, and I'm not saying Kody is like Warren Jeffs, I'm just saying the fact that he is doing this kind of thing is not okay.
Not okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm just glad that she's leaving. I'm glad that, I mean, I know it's not fast because I know it's been years and years and years and years of this struggle back and forth. And the show's showing such a small amount. I think at one point, Kody on the tell-all was like, well, she was pretending like she liked it to the show in Vegas, and she was pretending like things were okay here. And I'm like, what else are you going to do? Right? Like, if Kody says over and over, I'm so sick of hearing her whine about it. I'm so sick of hearing her whine about it. And then now he's going to beat her over the head about anytime she was positive about it.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those where you're like, okay, that's just pettiness back and forth, and Kody's processing. I do have a dying question that I want to know as we go into season 17 when it comes to Christine and Kody. We know Christine's gone. She's divorced. Who knows what's going to happen? Well, we kind of do, right? Like anyone who's seen season 18, we know what's going to happen. We can see, but season 17 of how Kody and Janelle's evolving, I'm very intrigued to see there. However, when it comes to Christine, I am very, very confused as to how in season 18, Kody is so emotionally torn up about this divorce. And I've just been going through emotional hell, and he's just been having the hardest time of his life, and he can't get over it, and he can't function.
Good point.
And he's angry all the time, and he's turned into this other, all the things that we heard from Robin that we saw. I don't think Kody smiled a single time in season 18, the first season we watched. I didn't know he could smile. Why? Why is he so torn up over it? When he saw the boxes, he literally said, I'm not even upset. I need to process my emotion, but I don't feel upset, and I actually feel a relief.
Yeah,
And in the one-on-one interview, he says it again. He's like, well, just like that sense of like one less thing for me to have to worry about keeping her happy, basically, right?
I think he just hates the fact that he's not in control of it. And she just took control of her situation and said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not dealing with this. I think it maybe took him some time, and we will, I'm sure, see in this next season. But I think he realizes when he has no control over it anymore, he starts to have regret. And sure, there might be some missing her, you know. So you don't miss it until you don't have it, I guess, is the saying, something like that. Maybe he comes to terms and realizes that, oh man, I really messed up here. But it sure seems like he likes to be in control. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's just so weird to me because I'm like, okay, so you really only want to be with Robin. You're at her house 90% of the time. You have your family there. You still have somewhat of a relationship with Janelle. Meri's still kicking around whether you like it or not. If Christine's this huge thorn in your side that it's a relief when she leaves, then why is it affecting you in such a large way? Unless in season 17 we see how it affects him and his kids. But I can't even say that Kody is the same as what he used to be with the kids. Pre-COVID, I would say yes. Kody always seemed to prioritize all of his children. Yep. The wives would even say, like, his children are the loves of his life. Like, it's not his wives, it's his children, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't really seem to be the case anymore now that we're almost, a year into COVID.
Not when COVID hit. When COVID hit, everything changed.
So unless it has something to do with the children, as far as him like mourning the loss of Christine or that the divorce had this huge negative impact like they kept saying in season 18, I'm just confused.
Yeah, I hope that season 17 touches on that.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will.
I'm sure it will.
I mean, it's got to be a big part of the season, but we haven't seen it yet, so we're just intrigued to see how it goes from 16 to 18, season 16 to season 18, because yes, Kody acts very differently in season 18 than he's acting right now.
Yeah, we're going to be filling in the gap next week, so stay tuned if you want to see the final season, I guess the final gap season of us reacting to season 17. Again, will be out next week. And I'm just really excited to have the final puzzle pieces in place, to be finally caught up with all of you lovely people who have been watching the show for years and then watching us react to it with the fresh eyes.
Yes, thank you for bearing with us. And even though you knew a lot more than we did all along, we appreciate you appreciating our opinions.
Yes, and if you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, completely different than the Browns, then please like and subscribe.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here with us again, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.